The information provided in the following program is not a substitute for or intended to be medical advice. Medical advice can only be provided to you by your personal physician.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
Good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Harry Schick at WCTC in Central New Jersey from High Point Health Center in Highland Park. Our number here, if you want to call in, is 545-9282, and call us at our office at 732-249-9800. Also, I want to let you know that the good news is that I have been terminated in my job as Facebook director of the show, now that Sharon is back, as I totally messed up the last 2 weeks. So those of you who are watching live on Facebook, I'm sure you're getting the feed correctly and much better than I did. Welcome back, Sharon, and I'm glad that you're here to help out with that. The show is called Natural Health Consultants. Let your friends know if you want to catch this or if you want to share this on a podcast. Just type in Dr. Harry Schick, WCTC, and all the previous shows as well as today's show will come up. I love sharing health information, as I've said before, and I tell people that it's one of my favorite hours of the week is 10 to 11 on Thursday mornings. I'd like to start off with any questions I had from either last week's show or questions just in the office. So I have two questions I want to talk about, two issues that have come up. The first one was a question about arthritis that I was just asked recently. Now, I don't have permission from the patient to mention her name, although she's one of my favorite patients who asked the question. So I'll just mention that there's a very nice state somewhere between Maryland and North Carolina. So the question was about arthritis. So there really are two types of arthritis in general. There's many types, but two major types. One is called rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is when your joints are attacked as part of an autoimmune problem. And as we mentioned a few weeks ago on our autoimmune segment, the key to helping with that is to really find out what triggers there are and what things that you're either eating or doing that are making your immune system fire. Because with rheumatoid arthritis, every time your immune system fires, it fires at your joints. So we want to eliminate the triggers. The other major type of arthritis, which is the type that I was asked about, is osteoarthritis. So osteoarthritis is the most common type. And what that really is when you have a joint of your body, because, you know, I kind of laugh and think when somebody comes to me and they said, I had pain in my elbow and I went to my doctor and he told me I have arthritis. And I said, well, you just paid for a translation of what you told them, because the word itis means inflammation of, and arth means joint. So if you go to your doctor and tell him that you have inflammation in your joint or pain in your joint, and he tells you have arthritis, he just translated for you what you told to him, because arthritis simply means, it's a general term meaning inflammation in the joint. But what happens is that when a joint is misaligned or not lined up properly and not being used properly, eventually your body is going to become inflamed, and ultimately, as a way of protecting you, will get calcium put down in the joints. So those calcium deposits that people get in a joint when they have arthritis, it's really an effort of your body to protect yourself. So the answer, it's never, well, you have calcium deposits, that's why you have arthritis. No, you had a problem with your joint, and that's why you got calcium deposits. We have to be very careful when we do a test, if we see a picture, to know what's causing what. And we're going to talk about that more in a little bit. Basically, the idea with osteoarthritis means arthritis of the bone. We have to look at what kind of activities a person is doing that is repetitive, that's continuing to perpetuate the problem. We have to look at the alignment of the joint. We have to look at the balancing of the muscles. And then, of course, look at what's creating the inflammation. And a lot of times there are incredible remedies, natural remedies, whose only side effects are helping other things at the same time to lower the inflammation. So that's a very brief answer to a question about arthritis. The second question that came up this week was something that we get a lot in the office. And gentlemen, you really want to pay close attention to this. It's about menstrual problems. So, when people have menstrual problems or they have any kind of hormonal problems in that way, I like to explain that here's what we have to look at. So if somebody's having a menstrual problem, there's three basic areas that need to be considered. So a menstrual problem comes from an imbalance of hormones. Generally, the two main hormones involved are estrogen and progesterone. So those hormones are made by the ovary and secondarily some by uterus and adrenals, but basically by the ovaries. Okay, so the general idea is that there is a rhythm throughout the month whereby the ovaries should create a balance which changes as the month goes on between estrogen and progesterone. The least likely reason for a person having a menstrual problem is that their ovaries are not doing the job they're supposed to do. That is, of the three reasons, that's the least likely to be the problem. It's usually not the ovaries. The ovaries usually are capable of doing their job. The problem usually comes from one of two other areas. Number one, the brain is not telling them what to do. So there are two other hormones called abbreviated LH and FSH, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, which come from the brain and tell the ovaries to do their job. Often we find that there are menstrual problems because why those parts of the brain are not sending the message to the ovary. You can't blame the worker if they're not being told by the supervisor what to do. So when we examine to see what's going on, we have to always look to see are the messages, the hormonal messages coming down. The other reason, which is almost always totally overlooked, has to do with the liver. So here's what happens. Let's say that the message from the brain to the ovaries is doing fine. The ovaries are doing their job in making the hormones. And those hormones, once used, then go to the liver. And the liver helps to get rid of them out of the body. So if the liver is not doing the job it's supposed to do, what happens is that you get circulating hormone throughout the body, which has already been used. But the body does not differentiate between used and unused. Why not? Because it's not supposed to be unused hormone going around the body. So when your brain looks to see is there hormone there, and let's say you've got estrogen, which the liver never broke down to get rid of, so this estrogen is going to be roaming around the body, and the brain is going to see, oh, we got plenty of estrogen, and we don't need to make more. So it doesn't send the message down to the ovaries to make more estrogen. So a basic, big problem which gets overlooked is the liver doing its job to get rid of the used hormones that were there. If the liver is not doing its job with that, you can be sure it's not doing its job with other things. So whenever we do a workup on somebody who's having hormonal problems, we always look at the liver. We do blood tests, and there's other kinds of tests we do also to see that it's doing its job. Very, very often, that's where the problem is. The person comes in, the brain's telling the ovaries what to do. The ovaries are very happy to do their job, but the liver is not getting rid of the used hormones. So when we find that we look at all three of those things, the results are tremendous. And, people, a lot of times when I'm doing an assessment with somebody who comes in because of menstrual problems, I ask them if they have pain before during their period, and they say, oh, yeah, but, that's normal. I go, yeah, no, it's not normal. It's common. And I see that a lot in talking with patients. We have to understand the difference between the word normal and common. Many things are common that people feel, but they are not normal, and it's essential to know the difference. The body does not make any mistakes. It does what it's told to do, and there are no random symptoms in the body. If your body is doing something that it's not supposed to be doing, there's a reason for it. And we look at High Point Health Center, Highland Park. We always look to get to the cause. We look underneath. Arthritis is not the cause of a problem. It's the expression of a problem. Menstrual pain is not the cause of the problem. It's the expression of the problem. And on the other side of the segment, in a minute when we come back, going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, so please stay tuned. This is Dr. Harry Schick at WCTC, Natural Health Consultants. So glad that you're joining us this morning. And for those of you who are catching this later on the podcast and sharing with others, I really appreciate you sharing this information. Hang on. I'll speak to you very soon.
I wanted to be in the military since I was a kid.
I served in the United States Air Force.
I served a total of 16 years.
I was deployed 13 times.
On my second deployment, 4 bombs hit my vehicle.
And at 19 years old, that's the first time I ever saw somebody die.
Coming back, I was raging.
I started having pretty horrible nightmares.
I would wake up in the middle of the night, sweats.
I started drinking a lot.
I felt worthless.
I guess I never recognized it in myself.
Eventually, one day I just walked into the VA hospital and said I'd like to see somebody.
Don't suffer alone. You got to find that link with somebody that'll make you let it go.
It all starts with going to the VA. There's a whole community of veterans that just want to help you out.
It's for the guys who couldn't come back, so you owe it to them to live well, because they're not here with their families.
Visit MakeTheConnection.net.
Hi, it's Bert Barron reminding you to join me weekday mornings from 6 to 9 for Jersey Central right here on WCTC. In addition to 6 traffic and weather updates every 10 minutes on the 5s every hour, we have the top newsmakers, great Jersey, national, and international talk, great prizes, and more. Hey, if you're not listening, you're missing Jersey Hall of Fame radio.
Jersey Central with Bert Barron, weekday mornings from 6 to 9 on the new Talk Radio 1450 WCTC.
Something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I got some great feedback on our first segment. Could I please summarize it all very simply? So I'm going to do that right. I'm going to take 1 minute right now to summarize the first 15 minutes. Sorry if it got a little complicated. I get excited. You know, it's part of why I love doing what I do. On the arthritis model, 2 types of arthritis, basically rheumatoid and osteo. And if it's osteo, we have to figure out what's going on in the joint, correct the joint so that the problem can go away. On the menstrual issue, we look at 3 things. Is the brain talking to the ovaries? Are the ovaries producing the hormone? And is the liver getting rid of the hormone which was already there? So that's just a general capsule summary of how we look at things. The main point being, remember, it's something is there, it may be common, but it's not normal, and you should not be settling for saying, "Oh, it's okay if 1 week out of the month I'm in bed incapacitated." No, you're supposed to have 4.3 weeks every month healthy and doing what you need to do. Okay, so let's go on to the next topic, which I've been asked about many times. If I had a pet peeve or favorite subject, it would probably be this one, because I've been researching this and studying this and working on this for most of the 40 years I've been in practice, and that's cholesterol. Cholesterol is or what I like to call cholesterol phobia, fear of cholesterol, is a huge problem. You know, I remember, for those of you who've been around, you know, as long as I, or close to as long as I have been, and of that age group, do you remember seeing all the fertility clinics when we were kids and teenagers that were around the country? Yeah, me neither. There basically were no fertility clinics. It was a rarity when somebody had a hard time getting pregnant. As a matter of fact, the problem was people getting pregnant so easily. But that has totally changed, and I am of a firm belief that one of the reasons has to do with this topic of cholesterol. So, cholesterol is a nutrient that's made by your body. It's made by your liver, in fact. So it would be hard-pressed for me to think that your body would purposely be making something so terrible for you. And even worse than that, can you imagine, if your body made this terrible thing and then purposely laid it down in your bloodstream where it could clog your arteries and kill you, we would all be dead by now. I would not be talking to you. You would not be listening. There'd be nobody left on the planet if your body had something in mind like that to do to you. This is a totally misunderstood thing. As a matter of fact, this is really a case of circumstantial evidence. What do I mean by that? When they do surgery and they look at the artery and they see cholesterol there and the person's had a problem, they say, cholesterol must be the problem. But that's the same thing as going to a house which is burning down and seeing a fire truck out in front and saying, every time there's a fire, I see these fire trucks. These fire trucks must be causing these fires, when in fact the fire trucks are trying to put out the fire. So what's really going on with this cholesterol issue. There was a study done many, many years ago, and here's what happens. I think it was done at the University of St. Louis, if I remember correctly. Due to stresses, okay, I'm not easily distractible, but I just remembered something I wanted to tell you. And I'm remembering this now because I'm going to talk about arteries. And weeks ago, I mentioned to people that if you're not, this is a little parenthetical. If you think you may have a blood pressure problem, or if you have an artery problem or any circulation problem, if you're not taking taurine, Taurine, 1,500 milligrams a day, I think it costs $10, or $11, or $12 a month to do this. I want you to take a pencil and start banging yourself in the head and saying, I'm going to take taurine, I'm going to take taurine. Write it down, do something. It's the simplest thing. $11 or $12 a month for your arteries? Okay, I'm reminding you about that. Let's go back to it. Now, if there's stress in your body, raise your hand if you have stress. Okay, good. We all have it around here. If you have stress in your body and it affects your arteries, okay, it's going to affect how your arteries operate. Now, your arteries have two main jobs. You go slowly, and I want you to get this. Your heart pumps blood, and that blood has to circulate throughout your whole body. Your heart is a pump. It circulates blood. It pushes blood throughout your body, and it does it through a tunnel called an artery. So the purpose of an artery is to funnel blood throughout your body. I know there are veins that bring the blood back to your heart. I'm just talking about the arteries now. When your arteries are stressed, they can't perform their job well. Now, what is the job of an artery? Two things. To keep the blood inside of it, and also when enough blood gets there, it expands and then it contracts. It's like a rubber band. You know, if you pull a rubber band, because arteries are elastic, so when they get filled with blood, they expand a little bit. And once they expand like a rubber band, then you let go, then they contract. So the artery has two jobs: keep blood inside and expand and contract to push the blood through the body. Now, the arteries are very important, and we can't have major problems. So when there is stress in the artery, what happens is that you start to get little perforations or little holes in the lining of the artery. Now, what will happen if those holes get bigger? The blood's going to empty out of the artery, and it's going to just go all over your body, and your life expectancy will be about a minute and a half. You can't live like that. So the artery says, hey, wait a second, I'm stressed. Okay, I can't allow these holes to continue to grow in my body. I need to patch these holes up. Oh, your body is so smart. It needs to patch these holes up, and that's exactly what it does. So inside your artery, there's a little workshop. And what it does, it makes cement. And it makes a cement, and it puts that cement on the little holes in the artery. And it makes the hardest cement that it knows how to make. Guess what the name of that cement is? Cholesterol. That's right. Cholesterol in the artery is the cement that your body put there because there were holes. It's the patchwork of the artery. Now, there's a price to pay for that because cement is not very elastic, right? You don't walk on a cement floor and start bouncing around. As a matter of fact, I'm sure you've been told if you're a runner, don't ever run on cement because it doesn't give. So the downside is that now the artery loses its elasticity. It's not elastic any longer. But more importantly, if it had a choice, I either can be elastic or have holes. It will patch the holes and lose the elasticity. So now cholesterol, thank you, cholesterol, my friend, for going into my artery and patching up the hole that I had there. See how important cholesterol is? Now, you have a surgery done, and they look, and you have all this cholesterol inside. It's like the fire truck in front of the house. It's not the problem. It's the solution that the body made, the best solution the body could come up with to patch it up. What is the problem is the inflammation that comes. And that's being seen more and more, that inflammation is the problem. It's not the cholesterol that was put down there. So that's point number one. Point number two, if you think, for those of you who eat foods with cholesterol, there's only one kind of food that has cholesterol, by the way, and that's animal products. Eggs, dairy, meat, chicken, fish, whatever. If you don't eat that, you don't eat any cholesterol. You know, I laugh when I see a bag of, let's say, potato chips in a store and it says, no cholesterol, like, wow, they made a potato chip without cholesterol. There is no cholesterol in potato chips. There's no big deal. But if you do eat cholesterol and your body took cholesterol from the food and said, what can I do with this cholesterol? Hey, I got a great place to put it. I'm going to put it in the artery so maybe I can kill myself. It wouldn't work. It's impossible. It does not work that way. And there have been so many studies done. I know there's one study that was done where they force-fed people eggs. I think they had them eat I don't remember exactly, but I know it was between 50 and 70 eggs a day for a short period of time. And what would happen is that their cholesterol would go up at night and down by the morning. It doesn't work that way. Eating cholesterol, my friends, does not raise your blood cholesterol. What raises your blood cholesterol? Eating sugar. Sugar, and eating fats not from saturated fats, but eating polyunsaturated fats, which we talked about in the past, canola oil, safflower oil. These are things that raise your blood cholesterol. Now, when I started in practice, a normal cholesterol was, I hope you're sitting down, a normal cholesterol was between 230 and 300. What? Doesn't a person need to be rushed to the hospital with a cholesterol that high? No, that's what was normal at that time. But for some strange reason, which we'll talk about, all of a sudden the numbers of cholesterol kept dropping. And now I have people telling me they have high cholesterol. They're coming to me. Now I've learned. They say, I have high cholesterol. I go, okay, what was the number? You want the LDL, the HDL? What do you want? I said, I just want to know your total cholesterol. They say, it's 205. I go, you do have a cholesterol problem. It's a little bit low. Because we have learned that when your cholesterol drops under 200, the incidence of strokes go up. What? This makes no sense. This can't be right. Does this guy know what he's talking about? Yeah. What I do is I read the studies. That's where this comes from. So now I want to tell you my two favorite cholesterol studies done by the American Academy of Geriatrics, a peer-reviewed journal under the auspices of the Great American Medical Association. They found two things about cholesterol. They did a survey of reports in nursing homes. This was done maybe 10 or 15 years ago. Here's what they found. Please listen to this. They found that the higher, these were people in nursing homes, the higher the cholesterol, the greater the longevity. Cholesterol was positively associated with longer life. And the higher the cholesterol, the less dementia. What? Is this possibly true? Yeah, it's true. And now you know why it's driving me crazy for all these years. I have to take a person, I feel like sometimes going over to a person's house, sitting down with them in the kitchen, force-feeding them an egg for breakfast because eggs have been demonized. Oh, you can't. And even now, I saw recently, are eggs good for you? Aren't they good for you? What about the cholesterol? People are still, I can't believe it, in the year 2019, still debating the cholesterol issue. It is done, over. There is no question. It is good for you. It's part of your brain tissue. Do you understand that? All this dementia, all these people not eating cholesterol, lowering the cholesterol to 170, 160, 150, 140, we're trying to kill people. Okay, you need cholesterol for your brain. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the segment, you need cholesterol for hormones. If you don't have hormones, guess what? Fertility is pretty darn difficult without hormones. So when these numbers get lowered, the side effects and the problems are immense. And this is only a little tip of the iceberg of the story, but I had to begin it. Where did all this stuff start? Well, it started in a few places. But one of my favorite places to remember, it was back, I believe, in the 1940s, maybe the 50s. I think it was the 40s. There was the first company to make a poison called margarine. Okay, so margarine, which is absolutely never to be used under any circumstance, no matter what. Margarine was, the company that was making margarine tried to get it approved as a safe food by the FDA. Well, the American Medical Association did some looking at it, and they said, no way, we will not allow margarine to be in the marketplace. And they had a nickname, and I have news clips of this. Do you know what the American Medical Association used to call margarine? The Great Castrator. Because that's how terrible margarine was for sperm count in men when they use it to replace butter. All right. I'm carried away and I love it. I will see you in a few moments after the break. I hope you enjoyed the first 2 segments. Stick around and I'll see you shortly.
Hello, this is Dr. Marion with advice for older Americans and those who care for them. Many elderly residing at home have endured unsafe living conditions for so long they are unaware of the potential dangers all around them. Their smoke detectors may need new batteries, the wiring to a lamp may be frayed, or overloaded electrical outlets may shoot sparks. It's a fact that most accidents happen in the bathroom. At a minimum, I recommend that you add grab bars to the shower and affix non-skid adhesives to the bottom of the tub. Even a raised toilet seat can be a huge blessing for older knees. Broken bones and bruises are sure to follow if you don't address my number 1 pet peeve, scatterrugs. They are accidents waiting to happen. If they hold sentimental value, store them in an out-of-sight place. You can make your elders' living environment much safer with a little effort and a lot of common sense.
For more elder care info, visit Dr. Marion online at drmarion.com.
Join me, Gary Sullivan, on At Home with Gary Sullivan this weekend. We'll answer your questions about painting, insulation, ventilation, mold, or how to refinish the laminate countertop. I'll help you protect your biggest investment, your home. I'll take your calls about your house and interview home improvement experts every weekend. So join us and learn how to do it, what to use, and where to get the products you need to be successful. Looking forward to your calls.
Sunday morning at 10 on the new Talk Radio 1450 WCTC.
It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
Hey, welcome back to our 3rd segment, as usual. Welcoming Honey Sturzer with us. Thank you so much for being here. Hi, Honey.
Hi. Good morning. How are you?
Hello. Good, great. I'm thinking it's a nice rainy day. Why is it a nice rainy day? Because I bought plants yesterday and I didn't have to water them this morning. My timing was good. So we got a call. I want to just take it to say hello.
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 Yeah, this is Steve. I'm in Woodbridge.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for calling.
Hi. Listen, thank you for your advice. Your research is incredible. It's up to date. You must just graduated out of medical school.
Yeah, so I graduated from chiropractic school in 1980.
Chiropractic. Okay.
Right.
And on cholesterol, you were talking well. Can I have your phone number first, and then I want to ask you a question about cancer?
Sure. We're at 249-9800. We're located in Highland Park. 249-9800, High Point Health Center.
High Point. Okay. And do you have any suggestions about cancer?
Suggestions about what?
Cancer.
Okay, so
Cancer.
By cancer, I'm going to give you, when I get that question a lot, unfortunately.
Okay, I'm going to have to call you back. I have another call coming in.
Okay, no problem.
I'll call your office.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
So I don't want to talk too much about that, but I'm just going to answer that as far as we get calls about cancer and questions all the time. The only people legally allowed to treat cancer in the United States of America are oncologists. However, we are very allowed to treat people with cancer. So we treat people and hopefully make them healthy so that they can live long, healthy, good lives. And I appreciate the call. Okay, so switching gears a little bit. I'm going to talk with Honey now about a few other things. And by the way, we had another question about cholesterol and medication, which we're going to touch on next week or the week after. I wanted to talk, I was thinking about, I was trying to make a few personal changes this week in my life for the better, hopefully. And I just was reminded how difficult it is, how hard it is to change a habit. And to change a habit, we can't do something once or twice or 3 times. I mean, I've been doing let's say I've been doing something, over the years. I may have done something in a certain way 400,000 times. So Now, if I think I'm going to change that habit by doing it 3 or 4 times, it's not happening. You have to begin to reinforce the new habit. So when we pick something to do, we pick a goal, or we pick something that's going to change, whether it's an eating change or an exercise change or a mental health change, we have to be loving and patient with ourselves. And remember, we have worn down a pathway in our brain so many times for so long. And, there's nothing wrong. And, this comes up a lot with, as a matter of fact, I got an email this morning. I take my confessional emails early in the day when people say, "Oh, Dr. Schick, I'm so sorry what I ate yesterday," and they begin to tell me all the stuff they ate yesterday, and I say, "You know what? No problem what you ate yesterday. The problem is if you do it again today." And that's the way it is with habits and things. You just can't do anything about the past. But, 1 bad day is bad. 2 bad days is atrocious. 3 bad days is unforgivable. Actually, nothing's unforgivable. But, do it once. But, it's hard to change habits. Hi, honey.
Hi.
So, I'm just thinking about how difficult it is to make those kind of changes in our lives when we want to make a change in the way we've been doing things over and over again.
Yeah, isn't that true for everyone?
Yeah, it's everyone, all of us human beings.
Right.
And one of the things that really run us are things we do which create anxiety in our lives. And, I had this image of somebody who the night before decided to block their front door, and they moved a desk in front of their front door, and they put a couple of plants on the desk, and they put a couch in front of that, and they put their old newspapers all in front of the front door, went to sleep and had a nice night, and they woke up the next morning, and they were so mad that all that stuff was in front of their front door, which they had just put there themselves. I mean, this is the kind of thing that we do to ourselves. We have to be aware that when the things that we do, we have to treat ourselves nicely and prepare ourselves for good things to come. That's how the good things happen.
I think that sounds very wise.
So, when we're doing things and we're going to make a habit, we have to be kind to ourselves. We have to think about how we're going to do it, and we have to, I think about whatever you do today and whatever you think about now, you're going to step in the future, whether it's in an hour or 2 hours or the next day. So, if you remember the idea that your brain is like a field, and I know I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but I know for myself, I like to remind myself of this constantly, that whatever I plant in that field, that's what's going to grow. So if I plant weeds, and if I plant myself telling myself, it's going to be a terrible day. Oh, I got so much to do today. How awful. Well, chances are I'm going to have a terrible, awful day. Whereas if I can wake up in the morning and just say, you know what, I expect some great things to happen today. I expect unexpected great things. So it's not even things that are in my realm. I'm expecting something great to happen that I can't even think about or imagine right now. I'm expecting it to come into me, and I just can't wait to see what it is.
So that sounds like what you're talking about is what we call a self-fulfilling prophecy. Whatever you plant is what actually happens. And the mind is so powerful that it really works to serve us. So as you said, if you plant a flower grows. If you plant a weed grows. Our brains really just want to take care of us. And so whatever messages we send to our brain will act on those messages as though it's actually happening. So that's why it's so powerful, and that's why this term self-fulfilling prophecy, because you actually are being your own prophet and creating your own reality.
I know when somebody has something bad happens, and they say that, I knew that was going to happen. I think sometimes maybe that's why it happened, because they knew it was going to happen.
Right. It's sort of like the brain will do everything to enact what it is that you're letting it know you want. So, maybe in your gut you don't want it to be a bad day, but you continually tell that to yourself and plant those weeds, it ends up happening. So imagine how powerful it is in terms of how much power you have. And we often feel so helpless and powerless, and that creates so much more anxiety, is that we feel that we are so. But think about it. If what you tell your brain will help make it happen, just kind of hold on to that level of power that you really do have. And you were mentioning about being kind to yourself. So you planted some weeds. Okay.
Right.
Just be okay. It's okay. I'll just take the weeds out and and start differently.
Pull them out and just put some flowers or trees in or whatever you can. And it's just that, I think that the power of the mind and the brain. I know sometimes I'll get I get a patient in. Years ago, I would get somebody in who came in with a tremendous problem. They've been to 6 doctors, and they come in one day, and the next day they're feeling better, and they go, "Yeah, I don't know if it's what you did." I mean, in the old days I used to get so irritated, or they would say, "I don't know if it's what you did, or I just think I'm feeling better or something." And I used to get irritated and think, "What? You had this for 20 years. You've been to 6 doctors. You come here one day, the next day you're feeling better. You don't know if it's what I did." But then I realized I could be much more supportive to them when they're saying, "I don't know if I'm just thinking I'm better." Well, now I say to them, "You know what? It's good. Just keep thinking that you're better. Who cares why it's happening? All right, you haven't been better up until now, but it's more important for them to use that power where they're just thinking they're better, and the more that they think that they're better, the more potential they have to actually get better. It's certainly better to think that you're getting better than to think that you're getting worse."
Yeah, and when you think about the idea of placebo, which I'm all for, like everyone says, well, it's a placebo. Well, great. If it works, it works. But when drug companies test medications, in their report, they'll actually delineate what percentage of the controls versus the people that got the actual drug, what ratio are people getting and feeling better and having their symptoms remit. And the numbers sometimes are neck to neck, the actual medication versus the placebo. Right. So they're not getting the medication, and they're feeling so much better.
And I got to tell you, I'm interrupting you. I'm sorry. Well, I'm not, but I just for a second. So I saw this study. I don't know if you saw it last week. So I see this study which says if you give somebody a sugar pill, which basically means a placebo, and they know that it's a placebo, can it help them?
Yes.
So I'm thinking initially, no way. I mean, the whole idea of a placebo is that you don't know.
Right.
And it turned out that even when they knew it was a placebo, it still helped them. Did you see that?
I did see that, actually. And so that further strengthens the point that I want to make to all of you listening here today, how powerful your brain is, how amazing your minds are, and how much control you have in terms of outcomes that you can't even begin to even grab onto it and start thinking about this idea of placebo, that if you get a quote-unquote sugar pill, a tremendous number of people are getting better. So hold on to that idea and kind of use it to help yourselves in your day-to-day life and in terms of what you're struggling with.
Right. Imagine if you take nutrients which are actually good for you and you think that they're going to help you on top of that. I mean, with a sugar pill or a pill with nothing in it, and if that still helps, even when you think it might not help. I mean, obviously for those people, part of their brain wondered if it would. But now we want to couple it all together. We want you to do things which are good for yourself. We want you to think things which are good for yourself. Take things that are good for yourself and expect to get good results. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people who come in to see us with chronic problems are so used to being disappointed that they never get well. They're actually afraid to come in and think that anything's going to work. Sometimes wonder why they even come in. I see them coming. Well, usually they're dragged by their spouse. But they come in, and I know that I had somebody yesterday, suffering with Lyme's disease for 20, maybe 25 years. She brought in, when I see a person brings in their notebook by how thick it is, how much they've been suffering, all the tests that they've had, and she has, I have Candida, I have Epstein-Barr, I have Lyme's, I have all these things, and I tell them, and she says, "Aren't you going to treat those things?" And I tell her, I said, "Well, you've been to good doctors who've treated those things. I think there's something else missing. We have to look a little deeper." And as I was talking to her, and she saw that I was coming from a different framework and a different paramind, the whole way she was looking at me shifted. She went from one of like, here we go again, I don't know, and our husband's sitting, our husband made her come. So she usually it's the other way around, by the way. Usually the wife makes the husband come. In this case, the husband made the wife come. And as I'm talking to her and talking about different possibilities, I saw that her whole face lit up and a lot of the gloom left her. And I already knew just from that alone that, that's not going to fix everything, but I'd much rather have somebody working with me who sees a little bit of potential and a little bit of hope, as opposed to somebody who thinks, "Oh no, here we go again," using the mind to work with us.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight the fact that the reason she perked up and started to shift was because she was hearing things from you that she had never heard before. Yeah. And that's really one of your incredible strengths, Dr. Schick, that you think out of the box all the time.
Is there a box? Okay.
There are many boxes, and many healers and practitioners live inside the box. But when you get up at 4 or 5 in the morning to study, it's because you want to find a new way of seeing things so that you could bring new approaches and new modalities to patients who've been through the ringer and have that laundry list of chronic illnesses and feel hopeless. And so,
I appreciate that. Yeah. We were talking recently about genetics and how that's really changed so much in the practice. We can't go into that today, but I think that'll be a big topic for next week. But somebody sent me an email this morning asking me to comment on a study. I'd given them. They have a daughter with seizures that we're working on, and she said, look at this study about genetics, because I've been talking to her about genetics, and what this study showed did not make sense with what I was telling her. And I'm reading the study, and I realized the study was from 2015. And I told her, well, the field of genetics is changing so fast. In 2015, I probably would have said the same thing, but this is 2019, and it's changing like crazy.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm really excited about the whole genetic piece, too, because it's adding a completely new dimension to the way we look at illness and the way we treat patients. That is now, in my opinion, the forefront of how illness and issues need to be addressed.
Well, we're up against this is my least favorite break because it means we're almost out of time. We have only one segment left. I still think back on when I thought, what am I going to possibly do for a whole hour? But anyway, haven't had a problem with that. So we'll be back with you in just a minute. Stay tuned for our last segment. Dr. Harry Schick with Honey Sturzer, High Point Health Center, Natural Health Consultants.
When I first decided to go back, I was a little scared because I was older. My mom sat me down. She told me that it's not my job to be the man of the house. Her dream for me is to go back to school and finish what I started. I needed to hear that.
Jared didn't know how to get the money he needed for college.
I found out about the federal student aid program through my English teacher, and she told me, Jared, this is what you need to do. Once I got the form, I filled out the application. I did it myself.
Federal student aid made college and Jared's dreams possible.
When I first had the news that I received money, I ran downstairs and I showed my mother, and she was happy, so she started crying. But when I saw her crying, I started crying.
Need help paying for college? Go to federalstudentaid.ed.gov, an office of the U.S. Department of Education. Start here, go further.
My name is Jared, and this is my story.
Don't let a little static come between you and the WCTC talk you love. Listen live to WCTC on your mobile or any Alexa-enabled device. Or log on to WCTCAM.com and listen for free right on your computer. Just because you're not in Middlesex, Somerset, or Union counties doesn't mean you can't hear WCTC. Connect with WCTC from anywhere for the best in local and national talk. Rutgers football and basketball, Somerset Patriots baseball, and your favorite WCTC shows.
It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
Serenaded by Dr.
I used to be in a band. I was a guitar player, not the singer. I mean, I used to move my mouth like I was singing. People thought I was singing. I got a question at the break. Somebody saying, what about the study on coffee, about the two new studies about the benefits of coffee? And whenever I think about a study like that, I think about the study about nails put out by a hardware store. Nails are good for you. Look at all the iron in them, right? So you're not going to be eating nails for the iron. And although coffee has some good things in it, there's some downsides to it also. So I'll put that on a list for another time of how to look at those studies. And we'll talk about coffee in general. Also, I had a question about diabetes because we mentioned on our promo for the show that we're going to talk about diabetes, putting that off to next week when we have more time. But just briefly, because I did mention we were going to talk about it, I'm going to take just a minute or so. So there's two basic types of diabetes. Type 1, which is when there's an autoimmune disease, which is an attack on the pancreas where the body can no longer make insulin. And there's type 2, which is a more of a lifestyle problem, which is what most people have. And we do tremendously with both. And this kind of, in a sense, leads us into the next thing we're going to talk about in terms of mental health, because there's type 2, there's actually now what's called type 3 diabetes. Anybody ever heard of that? You familiar with that?
I did hear of it, but why don't you expound on it?
So type 3 diabetes is really another name when they're relating to dementia, where diabetes becomes so bad that it affects the brain and people develop dementia. And it's in large part due to the increased blood sugar. So, I used to take these courses in functional medicine, which were phenomenal, years and years ago, and they talked about something called deal breakers, meaning if your patient's got these things, don't take another step, don't pass go, don't do anything until you deal with them. Number one was anemia, which we've talked about in the past. Number two was a blood sugar balance. And there were others too, but those were the first two. So if you're dealing with either anemia or blood sugar balance, you know that you're going to have a very difficult time with oxygen, with inflammation, and those things really have to be fixed. Really need to work on those. And I have so many patients frustrated with me initially because they come in, aren't you going to help my X, Y, or Z? And I go, not before we fix your anemia, not before we work with your blood sugar.
So when you mentioned elevated blood sugar and some type of dementia, well, when the blood sugar is so high, that means that it's not leaving the blood to go into the cells, right?
Right, it's not leaving the blood to go into the cells, exactly.
I'm not sure if our audience knows that our brains live on sugar. So
right.
although sugar, when we ingest sugar, it's the big bad wolf, actually we break down the nutrients that we take in, and whatever gets converted to the simple sugar is food for our neurons in our brain. So if our insulin is not helping to transport that sugar to our neurons, well, then it makes sense that people would show up as having dementia.
But that, just as I'm sure that you know that, although if any of you got excited that you're going to help your brain by eating sugar, it doesn't work that way. That's not the sugar that goes to your brain. Your body has to take it from the food to do that.
Right, and break it down.
And break it down and utilize it that way.
Right.
So anyway, we already have our schedule for next week. We're going to talk about genetics and diabetes, two things we didn't get to today. So exciting to have so much to talk about. Okay. And we want to end today's show talking the next few minutes about mental health. And one of the things and Honey is really a fabulous expert with this. So one of the things with mental health has a lot to do with your relationships with people around you. So I always like to think of, a thing that I tell myself, I'm not the judge. When I start. When I see that too much of my day or too much of my thought process gets involved with judging anything, whether it's the weather, things in my office, my wonderful staff, patients, myself, my relationships, I know that I'm going down a very, very bad path. I'm not the judge, and the more time I spend judging others, and of course, I'm most critical of myself, and when I start judging myself, and harshly. I try and think, do I ever judge myself and think, wow, I did a great job today? Not often enough. So that energy that we spend judging should really be spending judging in a not guilty, favorable manner.
It sounds like a great plan for the planet.
So I know that when you work with when you have a favorite saying that you use when you're working with couples in therapy in the office, and I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm sure most of you can relate to what I'm going to say now, but the source of arguments between spouses, couples, and even family members usually stems from shame, blame, and criticism towards ourselves.
Say those words again.
Towards others. Shame, blame, and criticism.
Shame, blame, and criticism. Okay.
So when couples come in, and I work with couples, one of the main rules, right out of the gate is to take ownership of everyone's contribution to shame, blame, and criticism, and to make a commitment to actually not ever shame, blame, or criticize, which is a very tall order. And I've even said to couples that there might be a time period that the house will be silent because nobody will have anything to say, because most people engage in shame, blame, and criticism in a way that they're not even aware. So recently I was working with a couple, and they expanded it to their family and hung up the signs in their dining room, in the kitchen, living room, shame, blame, criticism, free zone. And each family member took on the responsibility of reminding each other when the dialogue started out the gate with that shame, blame, and criticism. And it's really changed this family's dynamic entirely.
It's amazing.
And yeah,
really
it is.
amazing.
And so that's my recommendation for you guys today, is to take a breath, in 4, out 6, and take ownership of the idea that you too could take on this gift to yourselves.
Yeah,
to your loved ones.
But what if I really have to say so? What if I have a justifiable criticism to somebody in my relationship? Can't I just take a pause and just criticize them a little bit? Yeah. I mean, what am I going to do with that?
Funny, because last week when I was talking to a family and the mom said, "But it's true."
Right.
I said, "Yeah, sure, it's true." He doesn't take out the garbage. Right. He didn't pick up everything on the shopping list. I'm not saying that it's not true. Just don't say it. It's not going to, at the end of the day, your needs do not get met when you criticize, shame, or blame. Really think about that. How much got resolved when you took that tack and went after whoever it was that was disappointing you and came at them with the shame, blame, and criticism.
So what do you do if somebody has, it is his job to take out the garbage and he hasn't done it and you want him to do it? So how do you communicate that? Or do you just take out the garbage yourself and forget about it? I mean, what do you do?
I always say ask. Say, honey, I'm wondering what it is that would be helpful for you to be able to see this through. Ask. It really feels very differently when you do that.
So you ask them what kind of support they need to do the thing that they...
Or what would be helpful.
Okay.
And also to understand that you don't always get everything that you want either.
What kind of relationship is this? I know, and and this goes back to what we talked about in the very beginning of the show about habits. That when I think if you're a habitual criticizer or habitual blamer, it's got to be very difficult to make that shift.
And even to have that awareness. But right. I was talking to a mom yesterday, and she decided to take it on and make that commitment. And she said that her son came into the room, and she had this idea of just because she feels like she has to teach him, that's her job. And then she said, well, do I really need to tell him that? And then he left the room, and she goes, I'm going to tell it to him later. She goes, right. You know what? Changed my mind. Not telling it to him at all.
That's great.
So I think, we're not perfect, and it won't go smoothly, and it won't be complete, and I'm sure you're not going to have total silence in your homes. But each time you make that conscious, intentional choice to not shame, blame, or criticize, your behavior can actually change everyone around you, because you have control over what you do. And if you do something differently that's positive, you'll be really surprised to see what the outcomes might look like.
I remember, this is reminding me a slightly different idea, that when I had little kids in the house, I was sometimes finding myself using the word no all day long. No, you can't do no. So I used to limit myself with each kid. I can only say the word no twice a day. So I really had to hold on to it for something that I really didn't want them to do, and I had to find other ways to talk to them instead of using. And sometimes I would go through whole days. I mean, the word no just kind of started leaving my vocabulary with them, and I found different ways to communicate with them.
Yeah. So you became intentional about what you were doing, and I'm sure even though they were little, I'm sure the way they felt internally shifted, and things felt so much better for them.
Yeah, I'm going to have to remind them about that so they can thank me. I think they forgot to thank me for that. So this is Dr. Harry Schick with Honey Sturzer, High Point Health Center, 249-9800. Thank you all who watched on Facebook, who listened in, who shared the podcast with others. Look forward to next week at 10 a.m.